and welcome back to Up the Villa podcast. If you are new to our channel, make sure you are subscribing, smash a like and comment your thoughts in everything that we discuss on this episode. Joined by Justin. How are you, mate?
What's up? Good.
Here we go.
Ready.
Here we go. What's up? He's got his baseball cap on. Got some
What's
new
up,
lingo. Right, cool. So
You're watching too much TikTok?
Yeah, well, you're down with the kids now, mate. You're smashing it on TikTok.
I'm with Sketch on TikTok. What's up, brother? You bet you don't know.
All right, don't deviate the fans away from Up the Villa podcast, mate. Do you know what I mean? He's got a TikTok and he's trying to get you all to go and watch it. But right, go and follow Justin on TikTok. He's doing some good stuff on TikTok. Right, so as you can see from the thumbnail and the title, we're here to talk about Ollie Watkins. And as the transfer window hasn't even opened, but as the transfer rumour mill evolves, certain Villa players' names are getting branded around the place a little bit. And we've seen, Talk Sport talking about Ollie Watkins leaving. We're hearing that Liverpool want to sign Ollie Watkins. And I thought, you know what? It's a good episode for us to really have a good discussion about our elite striker, Ollie Watkins. So, Justin, I'll get your thoughts first, and then we've got some good little insights to go into with some of my graphics that I've got as well. But how do you feel as a Villa fan hearing Ollie Watkins to Liverpool, potentially leaving Aston Villa? How do you feel? And then we'll sort of get into other areas in a second. But how do you feel about, him being linked with a move away?
I think when your players are being linked with the best clubs in England and in Europe, then that means that they're doing something right. Because if they weren't being linked with the best clubs in England and in Europe, then why would we want them at Villa? We are now in a position where we want to be the best club in England. That's what we're aspiring to be. So the fact the likes of Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, these clubs that have been for the last 20 years, winning everything. That's where we want our players to be talked about. When Arsenal want a striker and they need a striker, I've no doubt this summer they want a striker. I fully expect Ollie Watkins' name to be at the one of the top three names that's going to be listed. Same with Liverpool, same with Bayern Munich, the same with everybody. Because he's had a fantastic season, he's maturing into a world-class player. Eventually, I think he will. Yeah, I think he will. I think he'll get there because he's improving every season. I've no doubt he'll improve again next season. He's not there yet, but I think he's got still growth in him. And I think that's what clubs will see. They'll see a player that's a phenomenal talent, scoring goals for fun, attributes that every single striker would die for. Pace, he's good at holding the ball up, he's good in the air now, his finishing has improved massively. He's a great, great footballer. And, as we talked about, on TikTok, I've really couple of very interesting TikToks the last couple of weeks. One was an Arsenal fan podcast talking about, apparently they've got a huge transfer budget this summer, and they were on about possibly spending the whole lot on one striker. And Ollie Watkins was that striker they mentioned. Could they go full bore for Ollie Watkins? And then today I saw one, Ben Foster's podcast, and he'd gone the other way. He said he thinks he's about 70, 80 million. He said, but would the top clubs want Ollie Watkins? That was the question, which I was a bit, okay, I don't agree with that. But yeah, I've no problem with him being linked. I've also no problem personally that unless we want him to go, he won't be going anywhere. That's my thoughts on Ollie Watkins and leaving Villa.
Yeah, we've got a great episode coming out in the next couple of days. And in that episode, and you've probably heard me say this phrase before, there are some untouchable key players to Aston Villa. And Ollie Watkins, I'm going to say Ollie Watkins, out of all of the Villa players we've currently got, So I'm not even going to talk about Pau Torres because there's no way Pau Torres is going to leave. But if you're talking about the players that the media have linked with moves potentially away, Ramsey, Luiz, Martinez has been mentioned a little bit. For me, Ollie Watkins is the last one you would even want to entertain a conversation with for me. And the reason why I believe that is because we know in football, you want to create a spine to your team, don't you? You look at all of the great teams across any team that has won trophies, they've always had a great spine. You want your goalkeeper, your centre half, your midfielder, and your striker. You look at the teams that get promoted, if they don't have a goal scorer, they're not going to stay up. If you want to get into Europe, you've got to have look, everybody has got to have a goal scorer. And for me, we have got one of the best strikers in the Premier League. We've got one of the best strikers that can possibly lead a line in Europe, in my opinion. And I'm going to talk of him really highly because not only has he got goals, but he assists as well. Like what Ollie Watkins can do to our team is something that I think would be very, very difficult to replace. You know, when Grealish left and Perslow did that little interview and he was like, we've brought Bailey in for Grealish's pace. We've brought Ings in for Grealish's goals. We've brought Buendia in for Grealish's. So they tried to merge three players with one player. Like, who is this player that could come into Villa and score 19 Premier League goals and get all of the assists if you were going to even replace him? So for me, he's so crucial to everything that we do. But not only that, like you mentioned about him, he could potentially become world class. I think for me, he's in the elite bracket at the minute. Like that phrase, elite. I think he's an elite striker. But going into the Champions League next season, if he can get to that level in the Champions League, and I'm talking, bag goals in there and look a class above, then you start getting into that conversation, don't you? And I just think he's absolutely fantastic. So for me, he would be the last person I want to leave Aston Villa because I think he's that good. And, like you were saying, you were watching that episode and they were saying like, okay, 120 million. Like that's very unrealistic that they would spend that much money. And to be fair, that's where I'm at. If you were even going to sell him, like 70 million, no chance. 80 million, no chance. Because the problem with that is for where we are right now as a Champions League club, we need a goal scorer and a goal scorer at the very highest level. So you are then shopping in a completely different market. And that market is going to cost a lot of money. And like, where are these strikers? Like, I have got a list of where these strikers are in a second. But the problem is, it would cost ridiculous amounts of money. So 70 million to sell him, 80 million. Like, it's not enough. Because although you would want to get value and you'd want to be able to reinvest it, like it doesn't leave you any money left to sort of really play around with, in my opinion. So that's where I'm at, basically.
No, it's a really interesting debate. And when I saw that TikTok drop and they were like debating signing Ollie Watkins, I wanted to jump on and go, you ain't signing Ollie Watkins. There's no way he's leaving Aston Villa. Even doesn't matter. Blank check wouldn't get Ollie Watkins. But the reality is, every single player has got a price. And if they did come in hypothetically with an absolutely astronomical fee, and I'll stand by this, I think Arsenal are going to potentially win the league next year. But they are a really, really good striker away from me from challenging to win the Premier League. I think that's where they fall short. So if they have got a huge checkbook and they wanted that one player to finish their squad and they come to Villa with a stupid bid, I'm talking 150 plus, then I think you'd have to sell at that. And that's not me saying that Ollie Watkins, I'm trying to sell Ollie Watkins. We cannot replace Ollie Watkins when the only chance you would get of trying to replace Ollie Watkins is buying two strikers of absolute quality, two £75 million strikers from, Europe and hoping one of them can replicate what Ollie Watkins done. So that's the only way you would sell Ollie Watkins. But yeah, he is, because goals are one of the hardest things to buy, aren't they? And it's taken him. He was a good player when he come. We saw the potential in. We saw what he could do. He's athletic. He's got all the attributes what we listed earlier. But he's improved no end. And I think another summer under Unai, another season, hopefully he'll go up yet another level.
Yeah, so I found this really interesting article that I've not come across before, and this is very surprising that I've not come across it because nothing really ever really slips through my net. Really, I'm on everything basically. I find everything, I know everything about Villa. So this slipped my net. So I don't know when it came through, but it did, and it's really interesting. So what we've got here, and we're just going to talk about Ollie Watkins now because we can, because he's our player and we love him. So here we've got a great chart of Premier League attackers, and it puts Ollie Watkins. And this is the important thing about Watkins, what I've took away. If you're looking at him scoring goals, then we're comparing him now to Premier League strikers. But if you're looking at the actual package of Ollie Watkins, so then we start deviating and thinking assists. This isn't even looking at assists. This is looking at shot conversion rate. It's looking at big chance conversion, and it's looking at big chance total. But then we got to think of what else he can do. And that starts to add to all the little cogs that make Ollie Watkins what he is for Villa. So we can see here that Ollie Watkins has got a conversion rate of 23.75. Isak is at 34.69. Haaland is at 24.10. Solanke is at 25.71. So that would show that Solanke's got a better conversion rate than Ollie Watkins. We've got big chance total. We've got Ollie Watkins on 31. We've got Solanke on 26. We've got Salah on 28. Isak on 30. Haaland on 46. And big chance conversion percentage, we've got Ollie Watkins at 35.48, 34.78. Isak is at dead on 50. I think it's glaring obvious here. Isak is class. Like, Isak is an unbelievable striker. So when we start to look at this, it shows that Ollie Watkins is, right up there within Premier League strikers. But, a lot of these strikers can't do what Watkins can do either, with those assists. And shout out to Dave, whose hair I cut. He spoke to me today when I was cutting his hair. And he said something really interesting about Watkins as well. And he was talking about like his goals, his assists. But there's a stat in football that I think needs to be spoke about a little bit more. And it's the pre-assist. Do you not think, Justin? There needs to be a stat on pre-assist. Because, no, it's serious. Because the pre-assist is so important sometimes. And I think when we're looking at, like, you just go like, okay, he's got the assist. But that pre-assist for me is crucial, I think, because sometimes that can be more important than like the little sort of like cut back from 5 yards and it goes down as an assist. So for me, we've got to think about Watkins' pre-assists as well. So do you want to add anything on this table?
I think his all-round game has improved, and I think what you're getting at with pre-assist is that not only does he create chances by assisting, but he's generally involved in most of our goals. Pretty much within one or two touches of the goal, Ollie Watkins is generally involved, and that's fantastic. And looking at those stats, it shows there is still room for improvement, and he's still putting the only thing that really matters with a striker is scoring goals, and he's scoring a lot of goals. So if he can improve those stats up to somewhere where the other players are, God knows how many goals he could get next season. He could be touching mid-30s, 40 goals in all competitions. With the amount of games we're going to have stacked up next season, if we go deep in a couple of the cup competitions as well, he could be touching 40 goals next season. That's a phenomenal amount of goals for anyone. So yeah, he is so integral to us, and I agree with you. He's I think he's unconditional not selling.
Definitely. Well, this is an interesting chart. Now we're gonna have to mention a different period of time, but we can. Right. So here we've got Watkins under 3 different Villa managers. Smith, Gerrard, and Emery. So shots per 90, Smith was 2.6, Gerrard was 2.2, Emery's 2.9. So under Emery, he's getting off more shots per 90. His shooting accuracy is less under Emery compared to Smith and Gerrard, only slightly. 63.95 under Smith, 60 under Gerrard, 59.84 under Emery. Shot conversion has gone up dramatically. 13.45 under Smith, 20.13 under Emery. Big chances per 90 has gone up dramatically. He's nearly at one big chance per game, which is absolutely huge. We've got big chance conversion, which is higher under Smith at 44.83 and 39.62 under Emery. XG per 90 has gone up massively. It's now at 0.51. And goals per 90 is now up at 0.57. So those stats are pretty interesting as well. Here we've got a graphic under Steven Gerrard. And, you know, this really highlights everything that we already know, that he was spending a lot of time outside of that, in that 18-yard box area. And now we can see that most of his time is spent in line with that 18-yard box and inside the 18-yard box compared to where it was under Gerrard. It's disappeared. Probably good that that period of time has disappeared from our memories slightly. Right, so I think that's everything that I wanted to show on here. Now, what I wanted to also show you guys was Ollie Watkins' per 90 stats as well, which were over the course of this season. There's a lot of green as well. But some of the interesting ones that I wanted to point out were touches in the attacking penalty area. He's now at 6.01 per 90. So he's touching the ball 6 times each game inside the opposition penalty area, which is massive. Progressive passes received per 90 is at 5.99. But the important one here is the shots per 90. But it's also that XG of 0.53. We've got a non-penalty XG of 0.47. And we've got shot creating actions of 2.80. So really, really good. Solid work from him. And I think it's just, you know, showcasing how good he's done, how important he is to us. One thing that I would probably say is an area I think he could possibly improve on. And I think when I'm going to say this, I've got kind of an excuse of why I think this has potentially happened, is that I think because we've had rotation between our forwards and we've had a lot of injuries, I think it's hampered how we've played at times last season, in the sense of when McGinn has been playing further forward and then we've had an injury, so McGinn then has to go in the double pivot and then Tielemans has to move around, and Bailey had that bit of strapping towards the end of the season. I think all of these things have sort of hampered our potency going forward towards the end of the season, which I think meant that Watkins just wasn't as... he just wasn't getting the ball in those areas of what we saw over the course of the season. But then my main point that I want to say is the area that I think he's got to improve on is he's basically at this moment in time a goal every other game, which is fine. You know, a goal every other game is, you know, that's a good record, really. You know, you're playing 38 games and at the minute he scored 19 goals. So he's basically at that goal every other game. But I do think sometimes he goes on those runs of either scoring, and he will have those little runs where he could go 3 or 4 games without scoring. And I think if he can eradicate those little spells, then he'll get a lot more goals. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, let's not forget as well, he doesn't take penalties as well. I mean, that's a huge minus for him for Villa, because you know a lot of the people in there amongst the top goal scorers were all penalty takers for their clubs. I think Cole Palmer scored, I don't know, maybe off the top of my head, he seemed to score maybe into double figures on penalties. That's huge. You know, that's guaranteed goals for strikers, isn't it? And he doesn't score them. I do wonder whether he would maybe look to try and take them up again next season. I don't know, but to score that amount of goals when you're not a penalty taker is phenomenal. Yeah, I really love Ollie Watkins. Ever since he's come to the club, he's been nothing short of just like improved. And I sort of had a quick look at all the strikers that I've seen in my time at Villa, and I was trying to sort of think, where does he rank amongst everybody that I've seen, and I wrote down. I got to 36 of the better strikers. I left out a few of the ones we don't mention. Going all the way back to Alan McInally, Nigel Callaghan, Ian Ormondroyd,
Go on then.
players that
Right,
are.
Justin, have you got sort of like a top 5 or a top 10?
Well, yeah, I got 36. I don't want to read them all out, but that even the likes of
You
Robbie
can
Keane,
you
Sutton.
can maybe do that on TikTok, mate.
Yeah, I'll do this on TikTok, and then I've basically starred 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them who I really really loved. So I'll give you the 8.
Go on
So
then.
McInally was my first real hero at Villa. I loved watching Alan McInally. Big, strong. He only had a season at Villa. He went to Bayern Munich, which I was gutted about. Dean Saunders, I loved Dwight York, Dion Dublin, Angel, who I know you like. I loved John Carew, Benteke. Cyril Regis was another one I really loved at Villa. And there's loads more, as I say, it's 36 here, but they're the ones that I really, really loved. And he's right up there at the top. He really, really is. And I've said
Yeah.
this a few times about this team and this current crop of Villa players. By the time we are done, let's say at the end of the Emery era, when he finally finishes at Villa, a lot of these players are going to be absolute Villa legends for me. And that's not something I say lightly, because a lot of fans throw that around quite a lot. Oh, he's a Villa legend, he's a Villa legend. But a bona fide Villa legend is somebody that's, for me, has been at the club for a decent amount of time, that's put really good numbers down throughout his whole tenure at the club, has shown real passion and desire and love for our club as well. And I think all these factors lean into to that legend status. And I think a lot of these are well on their way to becoming Villa legends, So, yeah, he's up there. He's in the top 2 or 3. Definitely.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think sometimes when you think of Villa legends, you sometimes think of like the trophies as well. But then when I start listening to some of them people that you've mentioned, like you start talking about, I don't know, like who could we talk? We could say Benteke. Like a lot of Villa fans would be like, he's like one of the best strikers we've had. He never won nothing. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think those types of players, like I think because we're in the here and now, you kind of don't think about that sort of legendary status. But I do agree, you are definitely right. So I've got to list them because of like we're talking about Watkins being sort of elite and in that elite list. And if you was to go, like who's out there that you could possibly, even look at. And I've got a great list of strikers, goal-scoring strikers of who've scored the most goals this season. I think it's in Europe, so it's from goal. So obviously we've got Harry Kane, number 1. He scored 36 goals. We've then got Girassi from Stuttgart. He got 28, who's, really, really good striker. Haaland with 27. Mbappe, 27. We've got Openda from Leipzig on 24. Really, really good striker. We've got Lautaro Martinez on 24. We've got Dubrovnik from Girona, who is an absolute beast. He's unreal. Really like him. 24. We've got Sorloth from Villarreal on 23. So he's at number 8. We've then got Cole Palmer, 22. Loads of penalty goals. Fair enough. Isak, for me, is one of the best strikers at the minute in Europe. He is class. So he got 21 goals. We've got Bellingham on 19. We've got Jonathan David on 19. And we've got Ollie Watkins on 19. So when we're talking about Watkins on the European stage, look at the company that he's like sharing there with those elite strikers. So you take Watkins out our team, right? You're then having to look at players like Jonathan David. You're having to look at sort of like, who else would you look at here? You'd look at this guy. You'd look at probably the guy from Leipzig and Openda. But that's the company now that our striker is currently in. And do you know? I think he's better than half of these that are even on this list anyway. So yeah, So I just really wanted to sort of do this episode and touch on Watkins and touch on, how good he is, how important he is, the fact that I think we both agree that we do not want to see him go, and I don't think he will go. But just I've not really spoke to you on the pod about sort of any of the rumours. What are you making of sort of like Weston McKennie and Douglas Luiz to Juve? Like what are you making of those sort of links and rumours?
I know a few years ago, Weston McKennie was one of the most sought after midfielders in Europe, wasn't he? Really highly thought of, really, ticked all the boxes. I think most clubs in the Premier League would have probably taken him at the time. But I know he came. Did he come to Leeds and had a really, really poor spell at Leeds? And he hasn't really done much since. Look, I'll say this, and I'll keep saying this. If Unai Emery chooses to sign him, then for me, he thinks he can get something out of him. Ross Barkley deal looks today, at the time of recording, to be a done deal. Fabrizio Romano seems to have basically said it's all but done now, barring the announcement. And, I know that split quite a few of the fan base, but you've got to trust what the manager sees. And this scouting network and this group that we've put together behind the scenes now, they're not just going to willy-nilly go out and think, we'll just sign him. We need a player. That'll do. He'll do. He was good 4 years ago. Let's see if we can get the best out of him. They would be systematically going through these players and looking at exactly what they can bring to Villa. And yes, I think there is a financial implication to signings now. And currently, we've got to be a bit clever with money. So it might mean that we have got to go after a player like that. But Emery would not sign him unless he felt he had value to our team. So yes, he hasn't had the greatest of spells the last 18 months, 2 years. Well, could you get the best out of him? You wouldn't necessarily be coming in and saying you're going to be a starter. He's a squad. He would be a squad player, and he would add depth and quality to the bench. So, highly experienced. Track record of having really good spells in Europe. It's depending on how much it would cost. As I say, if Emery sanctions it, that's good enough for me.
Yeah, I'm of that mindset totally as well. Emery knows how
We
to
don't
improve
see
players.
these players, Luke, do we?
No.
We're not scouts. Anybody can click on a YouTube video and go, oh, look at him, he was brilliant 5 years ago. We all do. We all talk ourselves into all these signings. A player drops up, you go onto YouTube, you watch a 2-minute clip of their best bits over the last 5 years. And if you showed a 2-minute clip of my best bits from my playing career, you'd think I was Zidane. But
Hey,
I'm a very, very
you got
poor footballer.
two goals at Villa Park,
Exactly,
mate.
yeah. So what I'm
don't
saying
give
is
yourself
anybody's...
any disservice there, mate.
No. Anybody can put a highlights reel together and show that you're a very good footballer, but the club would be doing far, far more deep line, depth into these players. And if he gets as far as him signing on a dotted line and in the shirt on the pitch, as they say, then he would hopefully add value to our team. So that's more than good enough for me.
Yeah, spot on. Right, love it. So hopefully you've all enjoyed this episode about Watkins. It's been a good chat, that has. So tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow or the day after, we've got a good episode coming out as well.
He's just made the starting lineup for England, Ollie Watkins.
Has he? Buzzing.
Yep.
So
and
that's what I'm going to
Conser.
do. Oh, great! So that's what I'm going to go and do. I'm going to go and watch England. I'm going to renew my season ticket. What the Villa?
Up the Ollie Watkins.